What is up, Buff Nation, and welcome on into the Sko Show, powered by our friends over at Peckish. Aniello, Piro, Chase, Howell, Danny Bailey, not behind the glass, but behind the screen, whatever you want to call it, here in the Mile High Sports Studios, talking all things Colorado Buffaloes. Thanksgiving is upon us. We're getting later and later into the year, and the Buffs are trending in the right direction, my friend.
Thanksgiving? Already?
Already.
And the Buffs, they're still in the college football playoff conversation?
I don't think they're just still in it. They're leading the pack in regards to that.
The odds actually, I don't know if you saw this, but the odds actually depleted a little bit.
They got a minus?
No, it's going the other way. I think it's up to like plus 140, plus 150, where last week it was more like plus 120. And I think that's just because of how good Kansas is, which we're going to get into, and the tough game that they have on Saturday. Just a 3-point favorite, AP.
The subtle haters out there, like I've seen some takes on social media that like now because Kansas kind of played this spoiler dynamic the last few weeks, like a lot of people are kind of waiting for that letdown spot for the Colorado Buffaloes. And look, we're going to break it all down for you here on the program today. In no circumstance should the Buffs overlook this Kansas Jayhawks team. I know that they're not having the exact season that they had envisioned when the season had started, but I believe is what Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Utah were projected to be, some of the top teams in the Big 12 this season. But Kansas, at least in the second half of the year, has started to resemble that program that they were expecting to be. But man, the fact that the Buffs are 8-2, number 16 in the college football playoff ranking. I mean, we've been saying it now for what? At least 3 weeks, that the Buffs just need to control what they can control, play who's on their schedule. And as long as the Buffs take care of business, they're going to be right where they want to be, which is a spot in the college football playoff, or first and foremost, the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, 16, it's not where I expect them to end up. And there's a lot of discussion after Tuesday night's college football playoff reveal that Boise State is now the number 4 seed. So CU could not be guaranteed a bye, even if they run the table, as Boise State could be the 4th best conference winner. We'll see how it all plays out. I still think that if CU wins their next 3 games, that they'll probably end up with that first round bye.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And we're going to break down this Kansas game in depth, but why don't we kind of backtrack here for just a moment? Because regardless of where they're going to end up in the seeding, as long as what I just said, they keep winning these games and doing it in pretty convincing fashion like they did last weekend against Utah, I mean, they're going to give the voters no choice. I mean, if they can win the Big 12 championship game, then there's no discussion whatsoever because they get the automatic bid. But a first-round bye would be pretty sweet too.
I think that's what they got to be playing for right now. They're going to get a really tough matchup in the first round if they don't have a bye. It's going to be a tough matchup in the second round too. So you got to be playing for that 4 spot. I think they've done a good job of convincing the committee the last few weeks, but you got to keep crushing these teams.
Who would be like if they don't have the bye? Like I know there's still some weeks left to play, but what's the type of team that they'd probably have to face in the first round?
So you would probably end up being an 11 or a 12 seed.
Right.
So they're going to play the 5 or the 6, which is going to be one of the top teams out of the SEC or the Big 10.
I don't even want to think about that, but get there first and then we can have some fun with it. See you if they, because, if they were the 11 seed, then they'd be on the road for that game too, no?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't even imagine that. See you having to go down south. But let's not put one foot in front of the other. Let's talk about what's happening now. And the Buffs took care of business over the weekend, taking down the Utah Utes 49-24, your final score. I thought it was going to be a little bit of a tighter game just because of how Utah's defense has been playing. And, their offense was able to put up 24 points, but what's the one thing that you and I always talk about? Give Shedeur Sanders time. Let him find his receivers. Let this offense get going. And they're a machine that sometimes can't be stopped. And that's exactly what you saw as they put up 49 points on Utah.
Yeah, I think we did see a really tough Utah defense. I think it's surprising when you look at the final scoreboard that it was actually 49 points. But the CU offense struggled for almost 3 quarters of that game. They were able to get a few garbage time touchdowns, which I think makes that look even better. They got lucky to be up 14-3 with the LeJonte Wester punt return. The offense was very anemic, I thought, in the first and second quarter, which is kind of what we expected. We knew Utah was going to be a very formidable defense. They have a very good front 7. They're much more healthy now than they were in the middle of the season when they were struggling. So CU struggled on offense, and then all of a sudden you look up and Shedeur threw for 75% completion, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns. He still did his thing. But if you take away a couple of those 4th downs, they had the 4th down to Will Shepherd in the end zone, which was a 50-yard bomb.
Yep.
They had the 4th down to Travis Hunter. I think Shedeur's stats would have looked a lot different. I don't think CU would have put up that many points. So they did get a little bit lucky on fourth down, which is obviously what wins you football games. But yeah, I thought CU's offense struggled, and I think Shedeur would even say he had one of his worst games.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair to say, and to your point, CU was very good on fourth down, 2 for 2 on those fourth down conversions, and not so good on third down.
With an average of like 50 yards.
Yeah, exactly. They were 3 for 11 on third down, which you need to see them correct that. But even just looking at the stat sheets, man, I mean, they dominated virtually every aspect of this game. They outgained Utah 405 to 272, 340 passing yards compared to Utah's 241. The rushing game wasn't really a factor for either one of these teams, but CU outrushed Utah 65 to 31. And
hey, that's big.
It is big.
Say that again.
Big.
Say that again. What did you just say? CU outrushed Utah?
Yes, 65 to 31. And you and I have been big proponents of establishing the run in regards to helping to open up that passing game. And while it doesn't look like a big number on paper, you can see with your eyes how much that influences the play calling and just influences the variety that CU is able to kind of throw at these other teams on offense. And what the crazy stat for me is CU nearly doubled Utah in average yards per play, 6.6 for the Buffs compared to 3.8 for the Utes.
And that is just run defense. But yeah, CU, I thought was able to run the ball pretty well. They had that big touchdown run by Isaiah Augusta, which is obviously good to see. It just doesn't seem like they've had many explosive runs all year long. And finally, they get Augusta into the end zone with like a 40-yard run there on first down. But what CU was able to do defensively against Micah Bernard and sacking Isaac Wilson obviously helped that. I think if they didn't sack Isaac Wilson, Utah would have averaged like 2.5 yards per rush, which is still really, really good. They ended up averaging just around 1 yard per rush against a Utah team that loves to run the football. So just a really impressive performance again by the run defense. I think we have to talk about it week in, week out. This defensive line is getting legit, both in the against the pass and against the run. They're playing like one of the best defensive lines in all of college football.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because like I listen to a lot of national sports talk radio, and it's been funny to see how everyone's kind of hopping on the wagon the last few weeks. But like, oh, nobody thought Deion couldn't coach. It was just a matter of putting it together and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And now they're starting to get their flowers. And I think a lot of that is because of the conversation that's revolving Deion Sanders and will he go, will he not go? We have a whole video on that on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to check that out. But to your point, man, he went out there this offseason and acquired a ton of high-level talent in the trenches. That was the one priority or one area of focus that CU had to prioritize this offseason was both the offensive and the defensive line. And for the defensive line and what Robert Livingston and the rest of the defensive coaching staff have been able to do is transform this defense into one of the elite units in the Big 12, which they're going to need this weekend against Kansas. But the other thing that we got to talk about here, Chase, each week it's like a different guy steps up at wide receiver, right? We've talked about Will Shepherd. We've talked about LeJontay Wester. Jimmy Horn Jr., when he's not hurt, is a big-time impact player. This previous week against Utah, it was Draylon Miller. 6 receptions for 108 yards and a tutty. Just another brick in the wall for the Buffs when it comes to their wide receiver room.
Just another weapon. No Jimmy Horn, no problem. You throw the true freshman Draylon Miller in the slot, and we've seen him flash a little bit throughout the season. They've loved trying to get him the football, whether it's been at running back or at slot. He hasn't had that breakout game yet until Utah, and that catch over the middle, perfect throw by Shedeur. But the effort and the will to be able to get into the end zone, and you see how strong that kid is. In his lower half, he's going to be a weapon. I know Coach Prime likes to talk about him being Deebo Samuel, which I think is obviously a great comparison, but Deebo Samuel hopped on the little Twitter sphere and started tweeting at Draylon, said, hey, what up, little bro?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, like I'm just looking at the stat sheet, man. They just have so much talent at the skill positions. We talk about Isaiah Augusta out of the backfield, but like Travis Hunter only had 55 yards throughout the course of the game, but he's still making a tremendous impact out there. Because when he's on offense as a wide receiver, other teams' defenses have to specifically design their schemes around trying to slow him down. And then, just because Travis Hunter doesn't make the most tackles in college football doesn't mean that he's the most impactful player either.
Wait. A corner's tackles, they don't matter?
Wait, what? It's a foreign concept.
How many tackles does Pat Surtain have? He's got to have a ton, right?
Yeah, you think, right?
No, he has the same amount as Travis Hunter. Travis is obviously playing at a world-class level. First time I think he got beat for a touchdown this past week. First touchdown he's given up all season long.
I was almost going to call somebody out, but I'm not going to do that out of respect for some of the
Call
people.
him out.
No, I'm not going to call him out. But there's some people that like, you see the way that Travis Hunter got burned on that play? Like, he's not as good as people think. I'm like, dude, it was one play. Like, Deion probably got burned a handful of times throughout his career.
That was the first touchdown Travis Hunter's given up.
Like, Darrelle Revis got burned a few times throughout the course of his career. Stephon Gilmore, Jalen Ramsey, like insert great defensive back here. Every defensive back will get cooked at some point or another. But the true value is the fact that they don't get cooked very often, and they're making a positive impact 9 times out of 10 versus when they're not.
Travis caught 2 balls in that game that I still don't understand how he caught it.
Yeah, exactly.
How did he catch the interception? It came off a deflection, and it's just instincts that ended up running in his lap, and then he's able to return. And then that 4th down catch where he just sailed above everybody.
Yeah.
And it looked impossible, and all of a sudden it is possible because it's Travis Hunter that's going up for it.
Yeah, it's incredible. I saw that he's right around like minus 400 now, something like that, to win the Heisman Trophy.
Are we starting to call it a lock?
I mean, it's pretty close to it. I think it's a travesty at this point if he doesn't win. Travesty, Travis, maybe something a little along the lines there. But no, I mean, I'd be generally shocked unless he just wets the bed the next couple of weeks. I think it's a virtual lock for Travis Hunter at this point.
But he's not getting enough tackles, AP.
Yeah, he's not getting enough tackles. Maybe that's going to be the reason why they give it to somebody else. Joke of an argument.
Ashton Genty obviously continues to put up some numbers, but he's not quite putting up the numbers that he was at the beginning of the season when we saw all those 200-yard, 300-yard games. I think he had another 150-yard game. Boise State's been struggling a little bit. We might need the CSU Rams to help out the Buffs because wouldn't that
be funny?
I think CU fans would love to see Boise State lose, especially with Ashton Genty and getting a better spot in the college football playoff.
I also saw someone call me out on Twitter about it earlier this week that the Colorado State victory for CU is their best win of the year. And I was like, what? What are we talking about right now? It was a good win. I would say their best win of the year is probably either UCF, Tech. I don't know. What do you think the best win of the year is for the Buffs?
It's hard to say.
Baylor?
No. Baylor, they had to squeak by. I think I would rather take a more dominant win.
Got to be UCF then.
Yeah, I think UCF just turned the tide of what we all thought about this team.
That was the turning point of the season. Like once they dismantled UCF, I think we went from like, hey, like this is a good team that can be fun to, hey, this is a good team that can contend for a spot in the Big 12 championship game in the college football playoff. And, again, they can, as long as they can control what they can control and keep winning these games down the stretch, man, they're going to be able to accomplish that. But real quick, you guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Peckish. You've heard us talk about it each and every week here on the Sko Show. My personal favorite spot for chicken wings and pizza in the Denver Tech Center. 2 locations in Colorado, one up in Boulder on the Hill, and their brand new location off of I-25 and Bellevue. So if you're going up to the games in Boulder, if you're going to see the basketball game, if you're going to tour the campus, whatever it might be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish. I mean, you and I were there last week. It's never a bad time. It's always a great time.
Never a bad time. After the game on Saturday, I had a few beverages in me. I needed some food. We walked up to the hill. I said, I'm going to Peckish. I didn't even think twice about it. Honey garlic chicken sandwich.
Chicken sandwich, you say?
I went for the sandwich because I needed the fuel immediately. I didn't want the wings. I need a little bread. I need a little bread in me. I had the honey garlic chicken sandwich. It was incredible. Maybe the best chicken sandwich I've ever had.
Wow. Now I'm going to go up to the hill and try that myself. But be sure to check out our friends online, peckishco.com. Check them out on social media. If you go in, let them know that the Sko Show and Mile High Sports sent you. But I promise you will not be disappointed. It's Coach Prime approved. It's Shedeur Sanders approved. It's Travis Hunter approved. And it's Sko Show approved as well. So be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish. Again, 2 locations, one up on the hill in Boulder, and their brand new location in the Denver Tech Center right off of I-25 and Bellevue.
Honey garlic.
Honey garlic all day.
Honey garlic.
It's like, I don't even know. It's like crack. That's like literally the only way that I could describe it, to be honest with you.
It's the best sauce I've ever had. If you like sweet sauce, if you like it a little bit more fiery, there's definitely some good options there as well. But the honey garlic, just melts in your mouth. Yeah,
no shortage of good options with our friends over at Peckish. But you know what else, real quick, before we transition on over to the KU matchup? The Utah head coach came out after the game and virtually said that was the best team they faced all year in the Colorado Buffaloes. A team in Utah that has historically owned the Buffs in recent memory. To kind of get that sign of respect from the Utah head coach, I think is a testament to where this team is at.
Yeah, Kyle Whittingham raved about him after the game. He continued to rave about him on Monday, just all the skill talent, all the stuff that we already knew, but to hear it from a guy that is so respected in college football, one of the best coaches in college football, is pretty cool to hear. But I think it's getting obvious to people. If you turn on these games and you watch this team and you watch all the skill they have at wide receiver, you watch Shedeur Sanders, but you also watch this defense. AP, I'll give you a stat. Colorado is 6th in the country in sacks.
Wow.
In the country.
Top 10.
We've talked about them leading the Big 12. I think they lead the Big 12 by 7 sacks now. But they are now 6th in the country in sacks.
And I know there's a lot of guys that are responsible for that, whether they're players or coaches. But, like, remember everyone was goofing off about why are they bringing in Warren Sapp? Deion's just giving his buddy a job. Like, Deion just wants him around. Like, Warren Sapp is probably a large reason as to, like, think about that mentality. Like, I think back to the DJ McKinney interview that I did, and I asked him about, like, the decision to come to Colorado and play cornerback, and he told me how the ability to learn from one of the best that's ever done it at his position was a significant reason as to why he wanted to come here. And I'm not saying Warren Sapp maybe moved the needle for some of these defensive linemen, but imagine having an all-time great pass rusher in NFL history and football history giving you advice and pumping you up before you go out there.
Yeah, they hang out and watch film together. But also Coach Lewis, Damian Lewis,
Yep.
the defensive line coach, he's a dog. I love watching him on Well Off Media, Reach the People Media, and he's firing up his defensive line boys. And he's dropping words that I've never even heard of, but he knows how to motivate a group of defensive linemen, and they're playing unbelievable right now. Coach Dancy, too, the edge coach. I think these edge guys, Arden Walker, BJ Green, you can keep going down the list. Keaton Wade keeps on having sacks in every game he's played in. Sammy Okunlola has flashed in a lot of games. These edge guys have been unbelievable, and now they're in the top 6 in sacks in the country. They lead the Big 12 in sacks. I think they're somewhere in the top 20 in tackles for loss as well. So this defense is becoming legit. The thing that I remember the most about the offseason and all the conversations we had about this team in the offseason was the college football, the EA Sports college football coming out with their rankings. Yep. And they put CU's offense in the top 25, which might not have been that big of a surprise because they have Shedeur Sanders. They have one of the best quarterbacks. When you have those ratings, you might belong in the top 25. They also put CU's defense in the top 25, and everybody said that CU's defense does not belong in the top 25. And by almost every single metric that you look at, CU is at least a top 30 defense right now in the country.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. And as we get ready to talk about this Kansas game, but defense travels, right? And you expect with the level of professionalism that you have with the offense and Shedeur, right? Always cool, calm, and collected. Like, they are set up to succeed. I've said it now 4 times on this show. As long as they can do what they're supposed to do, like, it's not like you have to be worried about, like, the lights being too bright for them. You know, we saw that against Nebraska, but I think that was just an early season kind of needing to get the jitters out a little bit. But this team is loaded with talent, and the overhauling of the defense, I think, has also been what's helped carry this team to where they are as well this year.
Absolutely. This is a team that is the back end, I think, has taken a little bit. I think they've been insulted by all the talk about Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and all the offensive weapons that they had. And they said, hey, we got some dudes here as well. And I think you're going to see more players from the defensive side of the ball get drafted this season than the guys on the offensive side of the ball.
I think it's a fair assumption to make, honestly.
Yeah, they have obviously Shedeur, and Travis might count for both sides, so maybe that one doesn't count. But I think the amount of talent and even NFL talent that they have on the defensive side of the ball, it's become quite the sight to see. Just every single phase, defensive line. Obviously, the linebackers have been great. We talk about the secondary and all these NFL corners that they have. Cam Silman-Craig leads the team in tackles again, and is just an absolute dog. I just love watching this defense play football, and I don't think they've been getting quite the credit they deserve, but they are the reason why CU is 8-2 right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And the Buffs will look to advance to 9-2 this upcoming Saturday when they get ready to take on the Kansas Jayhawks. That's a 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time kick on Fox. No shocker there. The Buffs are on national TV once again, as they have been each and every week throughout the course of this season. But Kansas, a large reason why we're able to talk college football playoff. A big reason why we're able to talk Big 12 championship. Exactly.
Why do they do it so slow? It's so crazy.
I don't know. Why is that? That's a good
Jayhawk.
All
right, that's the last time we have to hear it.
But they've essentially helped out CU in consecutive weeks, almost 3 consecutive weeks. Kansas State beat them 3 weeks ago, 29-27 on like a 50-yard field goal to win the game. But then Kansas really helps out CU by handing Iowa State and BYU their first losses of the season. They beat Iowa State 45-36. They beat BYU last week 17-13. And it's like that Grim Reaper meme that you see going across on social media. It's like, who's next, right? Like, CU's next on the schedule. And like I said, I know there's a lot of people that are waiting for the bottom to fall out on this CU team. I don't think the Buffs can overlook this Jayhawks team. As I mentioned, they were projected to be one of the best teams in the Big 12 prior to the season. But what does Colorado have to do to kind of slow their roll here against Kansas?
Yeah, I think Kansas is a good football team. I think we knew that going into the season. They've had a really, really tough schedule. I think their non-conference schedule, having to play UNLV, one of the top teams in the Mountain West, although ZU had to play one of the top teams in the Mountain West, which they didn't know at the time, but UNLV and then Illinois, a team that has really surprised some people in the Big Ten, and we're playing some really great football even at the beginning of the season. Jalen Daniels is one of the more interesting careers that I've watched in college football. There have been times over the past 3 years watching Jalen Daniels at Kansas where it said, oh, he might win the Heisman. I think he had the highest liability before last season, before the 2023 season at sportsbooks to win the Heisman. And then he ends up getting hurt. He dealt with injuries all last year. And then this year, you never know what you're going to get for him. Some days he'll throw 3-4 interceptions, not look like a good college football quarterback. And then some he'll play at that Heisman caliber, and I think that's what he's been doing over the past couple of weeks. But they have a lot of talent at the skill positions as well, an offense that has been built very well by Lance Leipold. And then defensively, they've started to play some better football, and I think that's why they've been winning some games the last couple of weeks. Obviously, not a walkover. This is going to be a tough game. I think it would be a tougher game if this game was in Lawrence, but I don't mind it being at Arrowhead.
I know that Coach Prime's going to have a pregame speech, something along the lines of like, look around you. Some of y'all want to go to the league. You're playing in the home of the Super Bowl champions. And I know that Coach Prime is going to deliver an incredible speech to a lot of those guys. And I think to your point, I actually think the neutral site does help Colorado. And I think because Kansas is football, not exactly a football-rich tradition. Obviously known
they're
for
basketball school,
exactly through and through.
They're a
basketball school through and through. But they've been much better. Like, what is it? The last 2 or 3 years, I feel like, is when they've kind of been on this rise to relevancy, because before they were completely irrelevant in college football. But I think the fact that you take a little bit of that hometown juice out of it and play in at Arrowhead, I think it bodes. It softens not the expectation, but like it softens the hostility that I believe that CU will have to face.
Exactly. It ends up not being as packed of a crowd of Kansas fans. I think you're going to get a mix of CU fans and Kansas fans. And I doubt it's going to be sold out just because it holds so many people. What does Arrowhead hold? Probably 80,000?
Something like that, yeah.
In the 80 range. But
I think all NFLs are like at 70K plus.
Yeah. So an Arrowhead has to be one of the biggest.
Yeah, I would imagine.
It's definitely one of the loudest when the Chiefs are playing there. But I just don't see this as being that hostile of a territory, especially when we know that a lot of CU fans will be willing to travel there. You can get flights to Kansas City no matter where you live in the U.S.
You could drive.
And I think a lot of us, I wanted to go to the game, but somebody told me I have to do a watch party at number 38. So I'll be here, but I think Kansas City is a great place to go to a game. So I don't expect it to be that hostile of a crowd. I think what I'm more worried about is just the talent that Kansas has and all the momentum that they have right now. And I think they're going to want to play spoiler once again. They're 2 wins away from going to a bowl game. They need to win their last 2 games. So there's a lot riding for Kansas. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be motivated. And CU is going to have to play at that level as well.
What do you think has been the biggest difference with Kansas in the second half of the year, maybe compared to the first half? They won their first game, and then let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 consecutive losses, with the latter being against Arizona State, who we'll talk about a little bit later on in the program. They're making a good push, which is why I think Colorado needs to keep their foot on the gas. But, lost to TCU, lost to West Virginia. You mentioned UNLV. They lost to Illinois as well. Like, what has kind of led to this resurgence, do you feel like, from Kansas, as they've now won 3 of their last 4 games, 42-14 over Houston, as I mentioned, a field goal loss as time expired against Kansas State, and now back-to-back wins against Iowa State and BYU, 2 teams that in those matchups were ahead of CU in the Big 12 rankings?
Well, I'll give you one stat that's going to explain it, AP. In the first 5 games, Jalen Daniels had 8 interceptions in the first 5 games. You know how many interceptions he's had in the last 5 games?
I'm going to guess 1 or 2.
2.
Yeah.
So
sounds about right.
Jalen Daniels has learned how to protect the football, and I think we know this. Turnovers can change a football game, and when you learn how to protect the football, and when you have all the skill that Jalen Daniels has, and you're able to protect the football, he threw for almost 300 yards against Iowa State a couple of weeks ago. He's been rushing the ball well. I think now that he's learning how to protect the football, he's not forcing it anymore. Kansas is starting to win football games. It's that easy.
And that's the thing. The way that I look at this is on a neutral field, right? So Kansas is better protecting the football. We know that Shedeur, he's had a couple of moments this year where he hasn't, he's made some bad mistakes, leading off the game against Utah with the interception. But I look at that as like, you don't really have to be worried about CU turning over the ball, right? Like, I think if you're able to generate some turnovers on Kansas's offense, that's a general plus. But on a neutral site, turnovers aside, I think CU's offense is better than Kansas's offense. Would you agree?
I agree.
And so we talked about the impact of this defense and how they continue to get better and better and better. And when I look at the betting line, a lot of bets and bets is what I just said. With CU essentially a 3-point favorite here against the spread, I think this game lines up well for Colorado. Even if we've seen them now, 2 weeks ago against Texas Tech, they were down 13-0, right back into it, right? Last week against Isaac Wilson in Utah, got out to an okay start, but then finishes strong. I think this game sets up nicely for CU, specifically because of the growth that we've seen from the defense and the expectation that Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders in this offense will just continue to get better as the game goes along.
If this defense continues to play at the level that they've played at the last few weeks, Kansas is going to really struggle to win this football game. And that's based solely off of CU's ability to get after the passer and what they've done on third down,
which leads to turnovers
the past couple of weeks, which good point.
Ding, ding,
AP.
ding, 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 ding.
PFF put out a stat that I believe Jalen Daniels under pressure has like a 32 PFF passing rating, and when he's not under pressure, it's like 85 or something. It's one of the biggest differences in college football. So if you're able to get this guy under pressure, which CU has done a great job of, they just got to continue to do that. He's going to start making some mistakes. He's going to start forcing some throws downfield. And when you force throws against this secondary, they snag it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game. And whether you don't want to throw to Travis Hunter's side so he doesn't have to tackle, well, then you've got DJ McKinney right there on the other side. You've got a secondary that's playing pretty well.
They should see if Travis Hunter can tackle. They should throw it to his side.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. I just think it's so funny. I don't want to go back to that argument entirely, but it's like, why do people look for reasons to tear him down? Like, he's like the nicest guy. Like, he doesn't party. All he cares about football, video games, and fishing, and his girl. Like, I mean, like, what is there? I don't know.
I know what there is.
What?
His head coach is Coach Prime.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like, if he's playing for an SEC school, if Travis is in Georgia right now, it's not even a conversation. He's minus 1,500 as the favorite. I don't know. It's just weird. But Sko Show, AP Chase Howell. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. That way you guys never miss an episode of the Sko Show. Mile High Sports today. We've got a pickaxe and roll with Ryan Blackburn. We've got the Broncos podcast with Troy Rank. So all of your Denver sports content right here on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. What is the one thing that scares you the most about Kansas? Like, what's the one? Is it the quarterback dynamic? Like, what's the one thing that Colorado has to do to win this game?
I think they got to take care of the football. I think they got to win the turnover battle. And we've seen CU struggle a little bit, a couple fumbles with the snap. They had another one this past week. I think they got to take care of the football. They got to win the turnover battle. And as long as they do that, which I think they have a great chance of doing, I think they win this football game. But yeah, I think maybe a letdown spot. I think what has changed about this game is all this talk about Kansas and the last two teams that they've beaten, and they should have beat Kansas State. So really they should have had 3 ranked wins in a row. And I don't think this is a letdown spot anymore. I think you know what type of team you're getting in Kansas, and I think they're going to be fired up to play them on Saturday in a big time spot on Fox.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. That's the one. I'm a narrative driven guy. Like, I love, like, especially when it comes to betting and just like talking about games in general. Like, I'm big into the narratives, and I'm not gonna lie, the fact that Kansas has put up this good of a fight against some of these teams does worry me a little bit. But I always thought BYU was a little bit suspect. Right. I was waiting for the bottom to fall out with Iowa State as well. And I just think, as we've said, CU continues to get better and better and better. So I think this is a real good gut check game for them, because if I'll come out and say it, I'll predict it. I think if CU wins this game, I think as long as they win, I mean, I would like it in more convincing fashion. I mean, that shows me enough that when they get to that Big 12 championship game, I think they'll be ready for the moment. That's how I kind of look at this matchup as well.
I think, yeah, I agree. I think if they're able to win this game, they show that they can dominate pretty much everybody in the Big 12. I think whoever is in that Big 12 championship game, I don't think CU is going to be worried about them. Kansas might be one of the toughest games that they've had. I think we say that every week.
But it didn't look like that like a month ago.
Right.
Like a month ago, it looked like this would be a cakewalk.
But playing on the road against a Kansas team that has a lot of momentum, that has a lot of talent, it might be one of the toughest Big 12 games that they've played so far this year.
And they keep playing that spoiler role. So it's going to be exciting to see how it shakes out. Real quick, you guys, let me tell you one more time about our friends over at Peckish. 2 locations in Colorado, one off of I-25 in Bellevue in the Denver Tech Center. So if you're in and around the Denver metro area, make sure to check them out up there, or down there, excuse me. And then up on the hill in Boulder is their original location. You know, we got some reports from some of our friends that went to Peckish that maybe there's some recruits that like to check out the restaurant, you know, and it's a good hot spot. So
were there some possible IMG players that were there last week?
Maybe, rumor has it. So if you're a Buff fan, man, you never know who you're going to run into up at Peckish. I've had like everything on the menu now. I've had the boneless wings. Are you an anti-boneless wings guy? Let me ask you this. Chicken nuggets type guy?
I am. I mean, I think they're chicken nuggets, but there's nothing wrong with chicken nuggets.
That's what I'm saying.
If you're going to eat wings, you eat bone-in wings. If you're going to eat chicken nuggets, you can order your chicken nuggets.
I think there's a time and a place for each. And I think the best part to me is there's no drop-off between their boneless and their bone-in. Like, if you're in the mood for boneless, you're going to get taken care of in an exceptional manner. If you want bone-in, buckle your seatbelt because they're that good. And then they've also got the pizza as well with our friends over at Peckish. So check them out online, peckishco.com. Let them know that the Sko Show and Mile High Sports sent you. And I think Chase and I are heading over there for lunch either today or tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to it.
Buckle your seatbelt. I like it.
Yeah, so that's always a good time with our friends over at Peckish. But before we get out of here, my friend, I don't even really want to talk about the other teams. Arizona State's surging, right?
Yes.
But like, the reality of the situation is, like, the reason I don't think we need to dedicate a ton of time to it is it doesn't matter if Colorado wins. The only way that Arizona State and you know, some of these other programs in the Big 12, the only way that becomes a conversation, in my opinion, is if Colorado drops one of these final 2 games.
Exactly. I mean, we don't have to talk about ASU on this show. We talk about the Buffs, and if the Buffs handle their business, they're going to be all right.
That'd be a fun matchup in the championship game.
Maybe the coolest part about ASU right now is how good Jordan Tyson is playing. Jordan Tyson was a recruit under Chandler Durrell. Coach Prime didn't want to keep him around. This dude might be one of the best wide receivers in college football. I think we knew that when we watched him as a true freshman at CU. But he had 12 receptions, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns this past week. He is playing at an unbelievable level. And if I want to make a point real fast at the end of this show, what happened under Carl Durrell, they weren't able to keep anybody, one because of NIL, the other because of transfer portal issues. But there's been a lot of guys that are playing some really good football. Nico Reed's starting at corner. He's the best corner at Oregon right now. Kalen Moore's playing great football. Cole Becker, we just watched make a few kicks for Utah. Anthony Hagerson's been on a roll at Oregon State. And then you have Jordan Tyson, who might be one of the best wide receivers in college football. So there was some talent on these Carl Durrell teams. They weren't able to keep them around, maybe because of the coaches, maybe because of NIL, and they weren't able to bring in any more talent in the transfer portal. But it is kind of cool to see these guys move on and still have some success, which we should give them a lot of credit for.
Yeah, and the last thing that I'll say before we get out of here is Coach Prime talked about it. He's fine where he is, folks. Like I said, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I know Michael Irvin wants to fan the flame on that. I want Coach Prime at CU. I think again, I'll say it one more time. He stays at CU or he stops coaching. I think that's the two dynamics. It's funny to see that you and I were talking about this like a month ago, and now all the national media want to make a storm about it on the First Takes and the Hot Take show.
Yeah, but AP, what if Shedeur goes to the Cowboys?
I don't know. I don't think Jerry would do it. Nor do I think Deion wants to work for Jerry.
Didn't they just pay a quarterback? How do you get out of that contract?
Yeah, it's stupid. I mean, you could trade him, but I can go on a whole tangent about that, which I'm not going to do. But no, it's going to be exciting, man. Hey, let's focus on what's in front of us, though. Coach Prime doing the darn thing, playing good football, has this team in position to contend for a Big 12 championship, contend for a spot in the college football playoff, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day. Go ahead and drop some comments. Let us know your score predictions. How do you see this game shaking out between Colorado and Kansas? Only 2 regular season games remain before the end of the season. Chase, any closing thoughts before we get out of here, brother?
No.
I I think we said
I was
it
going
all.
to say something, but I can't because look up Mr. Brightside and look up what Kansas State sings during Mr. Brightside. That's what I have to say.
Okay. All right. Well, Michael Jackson Thriller meme. Get your popcorn ready.
There you go.
2 games left. Holiday season is upon us. It's a good time to be a Buff fan. It's a good time to tune into the Sko Show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out our friends over at Peckish for the top tier chicken wings and pizza in the Denver metro area. But for Chase Howell, for Danny Bailey, I'm Aniello Piro. Sko Bus, baby.